Ooh, what happens if I press this button? It's not what it looks like! No, wait! Please stop! Don't go! You must understand! This is all your fault. Ahoy. This really does feel scandalous. So I grew up a Nintendo fanboy, and I am forever grateful. Now, something kids of my generation will remember is the fierce rivalry between Mario and Sonic, or in other words, Nintendo and Sega. See, people thought that the PlayStation and Xbox were at war. Please, that is equivalent of two neighbors arguing over lawn gnomes compared to what these two went through. Nintendo and Sega were actively trying to put each other out of business. It was like two dads trying to kill the other dad's children. The degree of slander they threw at each other would not be allowed today, which kinda sucks because that competition was good for the gaming industry. Us gamers too were benefiting from this when we had games thrown at us like Sonic 2 and Mario World. However, the tide changed in the mid-2000s to early 2010s as Sonic's titles really started to dip in quality. Games that were unfinished or just going in a bad direction. Meanwhile, Mario spent this time pumping out classic after classic. This era of Sonic games was so bad that it lowered the standards of his fanbase, causing them to praise games that are mediocre at best. Now, despite all that, Sonic still has a very hardcore fanbase that supports him to this day. Despite all the abuse and shit that Sega's given them, fans still wait for the next game with high hopes for a good time. Some could call that dedication. I call it abuse. But I want to feel that love that they feel, so that's why I decided to go on a journey and play through all the Sonic games. Now, I'm not saying I've never played a Sonic game before. Despite the rivalry, I've still found myself dabbling in and enjoying some Sonic titles back in the day. Games that I thought were good like Sonic Unleashed, Sonic and the Secret Rings, Sonic and... So in 1990, Sega wanted to really compete with Nintendo as the top dog of the video game industry. The Master System really didn't do anything for them, so it was time to change things up. They wanted to create a mascot to represent the brand and compete with Nintendo's Mario. So Sega held a contest within the company to create this mascot. You know, if you own Sonic Origins Plus, you'll have a booklet where you get to see some of the ideas that were thrown around. At one point, he was a bunny. Eventually, we got the Sonic we know today, a speedy blue hedgehog with red shoes and the can-do attitude of Bill Clinton. He did not with that woman. I wonder if Sonic's on that list everyone's been talking about. His shoes are apparently inspired by the album cover of Michael Jackson's Bad. I don't see it. Also, the blue matches the Sega logo. They truly knocked it out of the park with the creation of Sonic. So anyway, with mascot made and game designed by a newly formed Sonic team, we got Sonic the Hedgehog, released in June 1991. They went and bundled the game with every Sega Genesis console, and it was a massive success and kicked off one of gaming's most famous icons.
Always cool. Sonic the Hedgehog. No fool.
Now, unfortunately, despite the massive success that Sonic the Hedgehog brought, it seems to be neglected whenever it's looked back on. Personally, I don't have an opinion yet. I never played Sonic 1, so this is gonna be my first time truly seeing what Sonic's origins are. Now still, as a hardcore Nintendo fanboy, it feels somewhat scandalous to be playing a Sega console in here. So to prevent my Nintendos from hearing any blasphemy, I moved all of them outside for the time being while I play Sonic. Except for Wii Music. That game's tone deaf. So the story is that Dr. Robot Eggman Nick is stealing the Chaos Emeralds and is imprisoning little tiny animals inside his robots, and Sonic has to stop him. Which is also why anytime we defeat enemies we see a cute little animal jump out of it. Sonic the Hedgehog is a 2D platformer, which means it's the old tale of start to the left, make it to the right, and don't die in the middle. But what differentiates Sonic from other platformers is the blazing speeds in which we do so. Now, despite all these buttons on a Genesis controller, Sonic only has two controls. The D-pad to move him around, and a single button that acts as both our jump and attack button. There is no run button as Sonic builds up speed automatically. You can potentially play this game on an Atari controller. Any of the buttons on a Genesis controller can be that jump button for you. See, some people use Zodiac to determine someone's character. I determine your content character based if you're an A guy, B guy, or C guy. What was I talking about? Alright, Sonic. He controls pretty well. Whenever Sonic jumps, he goes into a ball, and it's only when you're in a ball you can damage enemies. If you touch an enemy while not in ball form, we take damage.
Rings are Sonic's health, so if you get hit while having no rings, you die, but if you have rings, you'll be fine, but you lose all your rings. And the fact that you lose all your rings is honestly a complaint I have. Like, you can spend your time collecting an absurd amount of rings, but if you take damage, that number drops to 0 and it stings when you see them all fly out of you. Especially if you have a lot of rings, because the game's frame rate starts to drop, and while it's mostly because of the Genesis hardware limitations, but it's also like the game is giving you a second to mourn all the hard work being lost.
I'm not a fan of the fact that you lose all your rings upon taking damage. If it was somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 rings, I feel like that's a bit more reasonable. It just makes sense to me that if you put in the hard work to collect a huge chunk of rings, then you deserve a couple more hit points. Plus, when they all fly out of you, you have a chance to collect some of the rings you dropped, but you'll still end up with only like 7.
Yeah, dropped a dollar, picked up a nickel. I'm f***ing happy. We have 3 power-ups in the game to help us though. One is the invincibility, which acts exactly as a star power-up for Mario. Second is the shield bubble that gives us an extra hit point, and third is speed to make Sonic run even faster, which feels amazing for Sonic, but whenever I have it, it gives me perpetual anxiety that I'm gonna run into something. So the game is structured with 6 zones that have 3 acts each, and at the end of the 3rd act, we have a boss battle against Dr. Robotnik. Now every zone in the game is different and has its own personality, with not only the scenery and music, but also the gameplay. The first zone in the game is Green Hill Zone, the classic Sonic zone that everyone thinks back to. It's the OG, sets a standard for Sonic games. The levels here are filled with many awesome opportunities to go fast and blaze through the level. A lot of fun loop-de-loops and multiple different paths for us to take, making each time playing the zone a new experience. Sonic the Hedgehog starts off with a bang because Green Hill Zone not only presents the greatness of Sonic gameplay, but it also shows off the incredible graphics and top-notch music.
The rest of the game, however, tends to be a bit of a mixed bag depending on who you ask. Me personally, it varies.
The next zone is Marble Zone. This zone becomes much more platforming intensive with not many speed sections, and it's mostly linear. Now some people dog on this zone because 5 minutes ago we were flying and now we're on a slow block ride across some lava. I get it, these levels could have easily been on any other platformer. It's a total slowdown, which is not what people expect from Sonic. But I like it. I love some good old-fashioned platforming, and that's what it was. And I honestly didn't mind the lava ride too much. If anything, it gave me an opportunity to truly appreciate the music, which is great and something Sonic games deliver on 95% of the time. Side note, anytime I land in lava, I flinch because I'm so used to it being an insta-death, but no, it just damages you. Getting crushed, however, is an insta-death. We arrive at the 3rd zone, Spring Yard, and this is where the game slowly started to lose me. See, Marble Zone was a slowdown, but Spring Yard, there is no room for speed because there is so much bullshit in this level that you make 3 steps in any direction, the game's like, nah, stop having fun. It's with this zone I really started to see the problems with Sonic 1. It is a difficult game to beat because of how oddly the game is designed. Sonic 1 is a very short game. You can beat it in roughly under 2 hours, but you'd have to do it in one go because there is no saving and there are no passwords. When you get a game over, you are booted back to the menu and have to start the whole game over. What makes it even more a challenge is that it starts you off with 3 lives and there is not a lot of opportunities for 1-ups. There are apparently some hidden throughout the game, but I couldn't find any. The first 1-up I saw was in Starlight Zone, which to anyone who isn't familiar with Sonic lingo,
losers.
That's the 5th zone. I found my first 1-up when I was close to the end of the game. Another method of getting lives is by collecting 100 rings, but as I said before, the game takes away all your rings upon taking damage, and the game will throw so much bullshit at you, it'll be impossible. The game has a mild bit of jank here and there, with some of the hitboxes often being wonky, like, look at this, how did that crush me? Plus, apparently Sonic, fastest thing alive, is defeated upon upward slopes. Now I know if Sonic ever pulls up to my house to square up, all I'll need is a Stairmaster. Sometimes getting caught in these pits with dangling spikes in Spring Yard Zone is a miserable experience, and sometimes the game doesn't give any indication of when below you is a death pit or something that's safe. I don't know, how about give me a sign like this, or maybe even this? There's a lot of trial and error with Sonic 1, which isn't ideal in a game that will send you all the way to start in a heartbeat.
Spring Yard Zone is usually the farthest I can get while trying to one-shot Sonic. It's just so unfair with how random shit just jumps at you. Yeah, Sonic 1 is a tough game, but fortunately, we got cheats.
That's right, with a button combination, we can access a level select.
Now some elitists are gonna say that this isn't the true way to beat Sonic 1. But listen man, it's not my fault the developers made it so the game isn't fair. I'm just trying to play through the whole game so I can give a fair and honest review.
Honestly, I probably shouldn't have, because the next zone is Labyrinth Zone.
Which at first made me think, oh, I'm gonna be running in circles for an hour, aren't I? But the title's actually misleading. It's not a maze. It's worse. It's a water level.
So Sonic being stuck in a slope is nothing compared to just how god-awful he controls when underwater. Sonic can't swim, so he just sinks to the bottom where he moves so slowly. Trying to move around with him is a pain, and whenever he gets hit, it feels like it lasts 30 fucking years. Now I know if Sonic ever pulls up to my house to square up, all I'll need is a swimming pool. Sonic has limited air in his tiny hedgehog lungs, so not only are we in a rush to proceed through the level, but we also gotta make sure Sonic doesn't drown, either by exiting the water or finding air bubbles. The one thing I will say I liked about Sonic's water levels is the sound design whenever Sonic is running out of air. It's effectively terrifying. It's what actually keeps this area of the game somewhat engaging, because honestly, it's pretty boring.
To emphasize how bad Labyrinth Zone is, the final boss of Act 3 isn't even a boss battle. It was honestly both Sonic and Eggman just getting the f*** out of Labyrinth Zone. So far we went from a perfectly fun zone, to a slowed down platforming intensive zone, to an even more slowed down bullshit intensive zone, to a zone where Sonic moves slower than a corpse. It's been downhill so far, hasn't it?
Fortunately, the next zone was the Starlight Zone, a zone that was just pleasant to play through, not only because it was much easier area to get through than the previous two, but Starlight Zone reintroduced into the game speed sections and being able to just run. There also wasn't as much bullshit being thrown at us, it felt great! See, this feels like a proper follow-up to Green Hill Zone. Makes me wonder if we just moved this zone here and moved every other one forward, if it would have paced the game a lot better. But I eventually figured out that Starlight Zone was just the calm before the bullshit storm, which was the last full zone of the game, Scrap Brain Zone.
It was such a miserable experience that in my notes that I took while playing the game, all I wrote for this zone was, I hate it. Fuck.
Watching back the footage, the trauma from 5 minutes ago that I blocked out of my mind was returning. It just takes all the issues the game has to put front and center, from the jank, unfair level design, and overall nonsense. But honestly, for what the game has mostly been, it's a proper final zone. The final act is something a lot of people get cold sweats over, but I managed to beat it quickly. I guess I got lucky. When we finish Act 3, we go into the final zone, which is just the final boss battle against Eggman. We have no rings, so we gotta do it flawlessly, and it's a pretty pathetic final boss. It's just a game of peekaboo, which is kind of disappointing because the other battles with Robotnik throughout the game were all pretty good. Especially the Starlight Zone, where we had to either slingshot spikes or ourselves towards Eggman. But anyway, we beat Eggman, day is saved, though the game taunts you that you didn't collect all the Chaos Emeralds.
Alright, I've got to talk about the drugs.
If you have 50 rings whenever you reach the end of a stage, you'll have an opportunity to jump into a big ring and play the special stage, which is basically a weird pinball LSD trip thing. We have to reach the Chaos Emerald, but it's so confusing to navigate, and honestly, the visuals just hurt my eyes. I didn't care to try to do any of these. Plus, even if I did, all I would get is a not so different ending, which wouldn't be worth the video game caused motion sickness.
Sigh. Sonic 1 is honestly leaving me in a bit of a confused state. Despite the multitude of problems this game has and the pain that it's caused, I still find myself looking back positively at it. All the jank and all the annoyances that would make me hate any other game, but with here, I put up with it and still somehow found a way to enjoy it. Oh my god! I know what it's like to be a Sonic fan!
Sonic the Hedgehog, like Sonic, is rough around the edges. When it does stuff right, it does them so right. Green Hill, Starlight, and Marble were all super fun zones to play through. But when Sonic 1 does things wrong, it sucks and is a drag to play, like when in Labyrinth or Spring Yard. The highs are high and lows are low, basically. It's either a really good bad game or a really bad good game. Whichever one sounds less worse to you is what my thought on the game is.
It's definitely a game that's hard to go back to, but I want to because it's fun. Which sucks because I really didn't want that to be the case because I know how much this game tends to be overshadowed by Sonic 2.
When I informed Sonic fans my intent to play through the games and that I was going to start here, they immediately tried to plug Sonic 2. Like when you're at dinner with your drunk uncle and he's about to say some very un-PC things to the waitress and you gotta stop him.
Hey guys, I'm thinking about playing Sonic 1. Play Sonic 2, Sonic 2, Sonic 2.
And I get it, but Sonic 1 should still get some recognition. It kicked off Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time. So while we look back at Sonic 2 with those beating heart eyes, there should still be a little left for Sonic 1.
Even though it doesn't deserve it. Anyway, that's enough Sonic for now. Time to bring my Nintendos back into the house. Ah, damn it.